First Republic sees its shares tumble 33% in spite of the fact that major banks out there throw a lot of money out of it, proving, by the way, what I said yesterday. Exactly what I said yesterday, that yes, you can throw some money at the problem and get it to actually, fix itself for a little while, but it's not a permanent solution. So we'll be talking about that, what's happening there, and what that means. Hunter Biden proves that he needs a new lawyer by filing a lawsuit against the Wilmington computer repairman that is going to be crumbled in discovery, but we'll talk about why that is and how stupid this actually is. An arrest warrant is issued by The Hague for Putin over his war crimes. Can they actually enforce this? Most likely not, but we'll be talking about that and what that means and where we go from there. And YouTube, on the same day that it suspends me, restores Trump's account after his 2-year suspension. It is going to be all of this and more. Welcome back to the backup channel. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Everybody, welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We are on the backup channel for a week. And do you know what we're on the backup channel for a week for? A 2-year-old video. And I look back at what they dinged me for. It is a Red and Ed show video, which means that it is a minimum of 2 years old. You remember? Because KTZed and I started working together. I'm sorry, it was a little over a year, not 2 years. But KTZed and I... No, it's got to be almost 2 because it was 61. And that was a weekly one. So that was... Let me do some math in my head. Yeah, 15 weeks before KTZed Redemption started. 17 weeks before KTZed Redemption started, which is already over a year. Yeah, an almost 2-year-old video. It was when John sat in for Elaine on episode 61 of The Red and Ed Show. They got me for misinformation, which means that in spite of my other 3 strikes that I got, the warning and then the 2 content strikes, they decided that somebody needed to go back. And I'm sure that, because I've been being a little bit more engaged on Twitter lately, I'm sure that somebody went back through and started flagging my stuff, hoping that something would stick. I'm sure that I probably got mass flagged over on YouTube, and they found something, because I looked at that. And by the way, that was the episode that, what was it? The Family Guy, the cringy Family Guy ad, the PSA that they had about the vaccines came out. They won't tell me what the misinformation was. That's the thing that gets me, because they will not tell me what the misinformation was. Like, there was no listing that just said, go through your whole video again and review it. Well, it's a 2.5-hour live stream. I'm not going to sit down and do a 2.5-hour live stream. Well, I'm waiting to see if I can appeal for this or not. So I appealed it and asked them what the charge was. They're not going to overturn it, but I'm going to appeal it anyway. But yeah, we are here on the backup channel for 2 weeks, or for 1 week now, and then we'll be back to the main channel, and we'll do a couple crossovers between the backup and the main channel, of course. So strap yourselves in, grab some popcorn. We've got actually not that much to talk about. It's a pretty slow news day today, which is good because I'm hungry. I'm very hungry. And I want to go over and get myself a fish fry. Arbold is driving, so he can't chat much. Well, and Lucas Gabriel says, so funny that happened in my Connecticut. Robin Comey got arrested for drunk driving and crashing into a dumpster in Hartford, Connecticut. Dude, that happens all the time with government officials. It never stops. But anyway, we got a lot to go. Well, again, I'm lying. We don't have a lot to go over right now. We've got a little bit to go over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and more as we come together to bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we've all had too much of our news coming from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. No more! Instead, get your news, get your culture, get your music, get your religion, get your video games, and other things like that from people who have had to make the same decisions that you have had to make in your life. Go check out all that great programming. They are great people to get your news and culture from. Tweets by Brit, by the way, reactivating and coming back to Twitter. That's awesome. Mr. Behavior entering the fray. Political commentary, so I like to see that. And by the way, for those of you who are not colorblind like me, can somebody make sure that I am wearing a green shirt? Because I picked this one today. Undershirt, of course, because my uniform is black for work. But undershirt for green, and I can't tell if it's green or brown. I can't. I'm a little bit colorblind in that region. It's mostly like the blues and the purples confuse me, but sometimes the greens and some of the browns do as well. But I hope that I got enough. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I did spend the entire day listening to a playlist of Irish bar music. Almost put it on today, but I thought to myself, yeah, I'm already tempting the YouTube gods by going on a backup channel, so maybe we shouldn't. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's get started. And we're going to start, as we always do, with the Dow and the finance. The live chat up so I can see what you guys are doing here. And let's get started. On the Dow, which actually goes into our main news story of the day as well, bank stocks slid 33% to bring the Dow to 31,861.98. That is down 384.57 points, not at its lowest point, of course. Again, the Dow hitting its lowest point at 400 points down today, or 1.19% at the close down, and this is again led by bank stocks. So we'll see what's happening with that and where that goes. The Dow coming on a losing week this week. Looking in at your Bitcoin, Bitcoin is at 27,471 US dollars even. $2,415 US dollars and 40 US cents up. That is right. We have had a run on Bitcoin today as people are looking at the US currency and saying, maybe not. Now, not official financial advice, of course. Go check with your financial advisor before you dive into anything crypto related. But one of the things that we look at when something like this goes on a big run like this is, number one, what is going to happen with it in the future? And number two, is it going to come crashing back down when we fall into what appears to be a banking run recession just like 2008? I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot tell you that's what's going to happen. But I'm looking at some of the same signs that I saw back in that time frame and wondering where this is going to go and what's going to happen with this. But for those of you who had some Bitcoin, especially those of you who bought it while it was on sale, congratulations. You made out like a bandit today. And we'll see what happens with that and where this goes with that. Looking at your gas prices around the Madison area, holding steady again, 330 being the pretty much benchmark around the Madison area with a couple outliers, 314, 316 coming out of here. The Shell is at 340 leaving the isthmus right now, but otherwise mostly 340s all across the region. So, well, no reason to go jump in and try to fill up or take advantage of a lower price right now. These prices may not reflect your individual prices or price changes. This is a single benchmark from a single market that we have been using from the beginning of Contemporary to see where the gas prices are going. So that is what we have going on for that. Let's grab one from NBC talking about the markets. Dow closes nearly 400 points lower as First Republic and regional banks resume slide. From Alex Herring and of CNBC and Ha-Kyung Kim, also of CNBC. Stocks fell Friday as investors pulled back from positions in First Republic and other bank shares amid lingering concerns over the state of the U.S. banking sector. The Dow lost 384.57 points, or 1.19%, to close at 31,861.98. The S&P slid 1.1 to end at 39,1664, while the Nasdaq was down 0.74 211, 630, 51. First Republic slid nearly 33% and the week, down close to 72%. That marked a turn from Thursday's relief bounce, which came when a group of banks said they would aid First Republic with $30 billion in deposits as a sign of confidence in the banking system. Friday's nosedive weighed on the SPDR S&P Regional Banking ETF, which lost 6% in the session and finished the week 14% lower. U.S.-listed shares of Credit Suisse closed nearly 7% down as traders parsed through the bank's announcements that it would borrow up to 50 billion francs, or nearly $54 billion from the Swiss National Bank. The stock lost nearly 24% over the course of the week. Despite the down session, the S&P advanced 1.43% this week. The Nasdaq gained 4.41% as investors bet on technology and other growth names ahead of next week's Federal Reserve policy meeting. It was the best week since January 13th for the tech-heavy index, but Friday's slide pulled the Dow into negative territory for the week, finishing 0.15% down. Bank stocks have been closely followed by investors in recent days amid fears that other banks could face the same fate as Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, which were both closed within the last week. The market has been responding to the latest developments in the sector after regulators said over the weekend that they would backstop deposits in the two banks. So, again, like the big part of the market is going to be the banking, and that's that's what it did the last time. The banking is what drove everything downward in the spiral. I cannot promise or say that's what's going to happen this time. All I can do is look at statistics and say, well, this is what happened the last time, so brace yourself, but don't panic. Trust me, there'll be enough blue check people coming out there telling you when to panic. We'll see what happens with that. And as we've had to do every day for a long, long time, we've got the layoff news. This time actually a consequence of the layoffs, not necessarily the layoffs themselves. Google won't honor medical leave during its layoffs, outraging employees. From Ron Amadeo. Would you believe that Google's mass firings from January are still going on? Yes, actually I could. You know why? Because I look at this every single day. Google's reported mishandling of its biggest round of layoffs ever has employees up in arms, and they're doing everything from walking out on the job to sending angry letters to management. Well, you're solving Google's problem if you walk out on the job. Hey, we don't have to lay off certain of these people. We've got volunteers! First up, European Googlers are just now being laid off due to the January announcement. Reuters reports that more than 200 workers were laid off from the Zurich, Switzerland branch of the company this week. The employees at that office walked out for a second time in protest of the move and even offered to take pay cuts or reduce working hours to stave off the job cuts. Google's layoffs seem driven by a desire to placate the stock market, though it's no surprise that these offers fell on deaf ears. Many of the Swiss workers that walked out in protest are members of the IT workers union Syndicom, and union spokesperson told Reuters, "Our members at Google Zurich and all the employees joining the walkout are showing solidarity with those that are laid off. They are bothered by the non-transparent nature of the layoffs and are especially disappointed in Google is laying off workers at a time when the company is making billions in profits every year." Current and former employees feel Google is being cruel on how it's treating employees who were on medical leave or parental leave during the layoffs. CNBC reports that Google has decided not to honor pre-approved leave for laid-off employees. Some Googlers formed a group called Laid Off on Leave, which is attempting to get Google to honor its previously agreed-to timelines for employees going through major life changes. Making Google honor its previous leave agreements isn't just about employees getting paid when they have medical or family issues, it's also about having continual medical care when they need it the most. As part of Google's seemingly discarded plan to offer employees every perk imaginable, the company has on-site medical facilities that many employees make use of. While employee severance packages might come within a few more months of health insurance, being fired means instantly losing access to Google's facilities. If that's where a laid-off Googler's primary care doctor works, that person is out of luck. See? When I tell you that you maybe shouldn't depend on your employer for everything, This is why. Well, let's see. And some employees told CNBC they lost access to their doctors the second the layoff email arrived. Employees on leave also have a lot to deal with. One former Googler, Kate Howells, said that she was let go by Google from her hospital bed shortly after giving birth. She worked at the company for 9 years. The Laid Off on Leave group points out that Google is not measuring up to the image it promotes to the world, saying Google is currently showcasing its workplace commitments and its participation in Women's History Month through various products and services campaigns. We agree with you. It's very important to recognize the hardships that still disproportionately affect women inside the workplace. So, a lot of what's happening here, I mean, number one, it's not surprising. It's corporate America. They're cutthroats. They got to be where they are from being cutthroats. Google is the top search engine in the world because they're cutthroats. It's just a fact of life. It's a thing that happens. We may not like it. We don't have to like it. But it does happen. As far as what we are seeing from this, though, I mean, this might be enough of a reason to come back in and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't go back in and use Google for as much as we are anymore, because let's face it, they kind of suck. A couple things that go with that. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, honestly. One of the devices that is streaming this program right now, sitting out here in the corner, streaming out to the Instagram, is run by a Google operating system, and Apple is no better. In any stretch of the imagination, one of the things to pay attention to with this, number one, is going to be the layoffs. Now, with these people walking out, do they go back and get fired now? I hate to tell you this, but in today's market, where now it's competitive to get jobs and there are a lot of people laid off, there are going to be people that go and fill that job. You are replaceable in this market. I understand. Keep in mind, I understand where you're at right now because it's in a situation where I was not that long ago, and something that I am paying close attention to. Now, mind you, the work my ass off side of things is something that comes with family, even though I was never really given a chance to shine when I was in my 20s. The work myself to death to make sure that everything is going right, it's in my blood. I hope, and I'm crossing my fingers, that it's going to protect me when the rest of the economy goes the way that the tech sector is going. I pray. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if it's going to protect me or not, but I'm hoping and praying that it will. With that being said, for like 5 to 7 years, I was not replaceable. I could get away with whatever I wanted to when I was working in the Madison area and the Janesville area, because there was not another person to come in and take my place. They couldn't fire me. They couldn't find another person to come back and do what it was that I did. And a lot of these people have been fed the same line since they got out of college. Oh no, you're in tech. You're fine. You're great. Just nobody can ever replace you. There are too many tech jobs out there, and not enough people to fill them. So just don't worry about everything. And now they're coming into a crashing reality, more like what I was like in my 20s, when you first get out of mechanic school, while everybody else is losing their jobs, and every guy's backup job, especially if he fixed his or changed the oil in his girlfriend's Honda once, is going in and turning a wrench. You are infinitely replaceable right now. So do keep that in mind when people are coming out here saying, oh, we're just going to walk out if you're not going to honor these plans. There are at least 70,000 people right now that are looking for your job. Keep that in mind. And that's all that I'm going to say about that. I don't think it's right either. But one of the things that you have to weigh into yourself is that there are 70,000 people looking for your job currently. So, not official advice. Let's grab one from CNBC. Going on to the title of today's show, First Republic shares slid almost 33% after deposit infusion dragging down other regional banks. From Fred Imbert and Scott Schnipper and Michael Bloom. Shares of First Republic were under severe pressure Friday, despite the beaten-down regional bank receiving aid from other financial institutions the day before. At the market close, the stock was down 32.8%, the worst performer in the SPDR S&P Regional Bank ETF, which dropped 6.0%. PacWest lost 19%, and Western Alliance dropped 15%, while U.S. Bank Corp declined more than 9%. Those losses came even after 11 other banks pledged to deposit $30 billion in First Republic as a vote of confidence in the company. This action by America's largest bank reflects their confidence in First Republic and in banks of all sizes, and it demonstrates their overall commitment to helping banks serve their customers and communities. The group, which included Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Citigroup, said in a statement. There were concerns that Thursday's deposit infusion may still not be enough to shore up the First Republic in the future. Atlantic Equities downgraded First Republic to neutral, noting the bank may need an additional $5 billion in capital. Management is exploring different strategic options, which may include a full sale or divestments of parts of the loan portfolio. Limited information provided implies that the balance sheet has increased substantially, which may well necessitate a capital raise, analyst John Hegarty wrote. Meanwhile, Wedbush analysts put a $5 price target on First Republic, saying that a takeover could wipe out most of its equity value. A distressed M&A sale could result in a minimal, if any, residual value to common equity holders, owing to FRC's significant negative tangible book value after taking into account fair value marks on its loans and securities. Late Friday, after the stock market closed, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported that First Republic was in talks to raise capital by selling shares to other unnamed banks or private equity firms in a private sale. Terms of the deal as to the price of the shares, how many, and to whom were still under discussion, and it was also possible that the entire bank might be sold, the Times said. There are some things to pay attention to with this. Now, number one, they got smart. First Republic got really smart when they came out and said, after hours, that they are going to go back off and sell off shares in private sale to go back and raise capital. Because remember, this was the exact same thing, except for the time of day that they did it, that Silicon Valley Bank did. Which is going to put Capital Ventures on edge to say, hey, is it time to go pull our investments out of this? Although I think that that shoe is already dropped. Now, what happens when you go back and infuse a bunch of money into a bank that was ripe for a run? While people may not run out and run on the bank right away, what they will do, especially if they're invested, and the investor class especially is going to look at this and say, okay, we're at a situation now where there's some positive in the cash sheets, so we can go sell off, get our stock out of this so it doesn't take us with them, and get out of this bank entirely, plunging the stock price. With the stock price being what it is, I don't know how a private sale is going to go. And again, the big question is this going to be taken over during the weekend in a private sale? And at which point all the workers get a new shirt and that's the end of it. That is, from what I can see from the limited information that CNBC just gave us, the best possible outcome for First Republic at this point is to have like a BMO or a Wells Fargo, even though they're having their own problems, come in and take it over, revamp it, and try to go back and do something else. But that is going to put pressure on all of your local and regionals who are not going to get the same treatment that BMO and Wells Fargo and Capital One would be another one too, or U.S. Bank or anything else like that. So this is a tightrope time right now. This is something to watch. And again, I remind you, it is probably not wise for those of us, the little folks, to go back out and do a bank run. Remember, even if that bank crashes, you are insured up to $250,000. If you have more than $250,000, maybe. But you and I, the common folk, are insured. Our $2,000, $3,000 checking account, we'll get all that back. It won't be pretty, but we'll get all that back. No bank is going to fail unless it's not FDIC insured. Do check that and keep that in mind. But unless it's not FDIC insured, you're going to be fine. From CBS, shares of First Republic and Credit Suisse tumble despite new capital. So Credit Suisse got it too, from Christopher J. Brooks. First Republic and Credit Suisse tumbled on Friday, resuming downward slides that were interrupted Thursday when both banks received pledges of emergency funding aimed at shoring up their beleaguered finances. First Republic plunged 33% on Friday, closing at 23.03, while Credit Suisse slipped 7%, ending the day at 2.01. The declines come after the First Republic shares gained on Thursday, while Credit Suisse shares were unchanged, reflecting a short-lived reprieve. Both banks received promises of capital infusions earlier this week, with a consortium of 11 big financial institutions agreeing to provide $30 billion in funding for the First Republic Bank, and the Swiss Central Bank agreeing to provide almost $54 billion to Credit Suisse. Yet fears about their financial stability continued on Friday, with First Republic announcing late Thursday, just hours after the bank's pledge to provide financing, that it could halt dividends. First Republic had reported $176 billion in deposits in December, but its recent borrowing from the Federal Reserve could indicate that depositors were withdrawing their money at a more rapid clip than before, one analyst said. In our view, this adds to the fear that other regional banks could see deposit outflows, although we would expect our outflows of a far smaller magnitude, the analyst Alexander Yoakum of CFRA Research wrote in a note on Friday. Credit Suisse, meanwhile, failed to allay deeper concerns about its finances despite approval for this week to borrow up to $54 billion from the Swiss National Bank. The capital infusion won't fix Credit Suisse's main problem, which is that it hasn't been profitable in 2 years, said analysts at Capital Economics. Credit Suisse has plans to address the problem over a 3-year period, but it's uncertain whether markets will give it that long, Andrew Kenningham, the chief Europe economist at Capital Economics, said in an investor note on Friday. So, and again, we're sitting in a situation where the problem isn't solved. We can throw money at it and give people a chance to go back and get their deposits back out of it. But the problem is not solved right now. In fact, the problem is worse than not solved, because we're actually back at a point where we have to wonder what's going to take next. And I don't know. I don't have that crystal ball. From NBC News, Wall Street rides to the rescue as 11 banks pledge $30 billion to the First Republic Bank. I think we know this one. We looked at this one yesterday, but we actually have the names of the banks that invested now. So, our mysterious benefactors are Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase will contribute about $5 billion apiece, while Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley will deposit around $2.5 billion. The bank said in a news release, Truist, PNC, US Bank Corp, State Street, and Bank of New York Mellon will deposit $1 billion each. This action by America's largest banks reflects their confidence in First Republic and in banks of all sizes. No, it does not. No, it absolutely does not. It acknowledges the fact that you're going to get a bidding war for the leftover assets and treasuries of First Republic after it falls, but if they were confident in First Republic, then they wouldn't feel like they had to go throw money into it. The deposits will be obligated to stay at First Republic for at least 120 days, sources told CNBC's David Faber. Regional bank stocks initially fell on Thursday but reversed higher after reports from Faber and others about the development of the deposit plan. In the news comes after First Republic stock has been pummeled in recent days, sparked by the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank last Friday and Signature over the weekend. Both of these banks had a high number of uninsured deposits, as did First Republic, leading to concerns that customers would pull all their money out. The new deposits from the major banks are uninsured. Oh, but they're a tax write-off. All the banks listed had that money to lose. And when it goes away, they will write it off, probably as charity. Here's a interesting one here coming from The Hill. I don't know, this doesn't say this is an op-ed. Excuse me, but I do think that there's op-ed words to this one. From Tobias Burns, here's why the too big to fail banks bailed out First Republic. A consortium of 11 giant banks that are ostensibly in competition with one another came together Thursday to bail out one of their own, the California-based First Republic, in order to help stabilize the teetering U.S. financial system. It's also raising eyebrows about the relationship between Wall Street and the federal government. Private sector rescue came just days after a public sector bailout of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank by Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, Federal Reserve, and Treasury Department. In that deal, taxpayer money is being used to backstop a federal line of credit extending to the ailing banks. Admin officials maintain the move to save First Republic was done at the initiative of the financial sector, but multiple outlets report that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen leaned on JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon to get the deal done. That doesn't surprise me in the least. The effects of the news on the beleaguered First Republic, which had at one point lost 80% of its share since Monday, were immediate. First Republic stock rose 10% on the news of the rescue package on Thursday, but was down more than 30% during trading on Friday. Private banks say the bailout was their idea, but reporting indicates otherwise. Reps from the banking industry told The Hill that the $30 billion bailout for First Republic was the bank's idea, and that the move was designed to stabilize the financial sector in the interests of the broader economy. The economy has been under pressure from 8 consecutive interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. U.S. officials have repeated this line, saying they're supportive of the move but not responsible for it. This show of support by a group of large banks is most welcome and demonstrates the resilience of the banking system, a Thursday statement said from the Treasury and other government agencies. But reporting by the New York Times, a former newspaper, and other outlets indicates that the private sector bailout was Yellen's idea, and she suggested it to JP Morgan's Dimon, who then corralled industry leaders to pony up funds. Despite still feeling bruised from the fallout from JP Morgan's rescues of Washington Mutual and Bear Stearns during the '08 crisis, Dimon started calling the other CEOs to raise the money, the Times reported in its Dealbook newsletter on Friday. Jamie Dimon and Janet Yellen were on call Tuesday when she floated the idea. One of the nation's largest lenders deposited billions of dollars into the First Republic Bank, the latest firm getting nudged towards the brink by depositor panic, Bloomberg News reported on Thursday. The private rescue takes taxpayers off the hook for yet another bank failure. Just days after the money was put in up to insure rich depositors from the venture capital industry at SVB. Political blowback from a second round of public bank bailouts may have been what Biden admin was trying to avoid in asking private bankers for help. The First Republic thing, it's disappointing, former FDIC Chair Sheila Bair said on the CNBC television network on Friday. I'm glad at least they didn't use government support, that the private banks came in and tried to stabilize it. But it's not clear it's working. The problem is, with this, that fear becomes the major issue. This is a classic Jimmy Stewart problem, she added, referring to the famous pop culture example of a bank run in the classic Christmas film It's a Wonderful Life. Bair said that people need to understand that deposits in a bank aren't simply locked up safe, but are reinvested in ventures that carry varying degrees of risk. Billionaire investor Bill Ackman called the rescue of First Republic bad policy in a tweet on Thursday. Yeah, probably. And insinuated that insurances about taxpayer money were being made behind the scenes. Yeah, probably. Spreading the risk of financial contagion to achieve a false sense of confidence in First Republic is a bad policy, he wrote. The systemically important banks would never have made such this low-return investment in deposits unless they were pressured to do so, and without assurances that First Republic deposits would be backstopped if this failed. Which is also the other end of this is, if this does still crash, the little people will get their money out of it, but then the taxpayers will come back out and give that $30 billion back to these big banks. Theoretically, I don't know if that's actually what Yellen's plan is behind that, but given what she just did for SVB, I don't see any indicator that she wouldn't. Other financiers disagreed, stressing the commercial nature of the consortium's investment. It's a commercial transaction. It's the right thing to do. Yes, it was encouraged by the Treasury and the Fed, but it's the right thing to do, and quite frankly, they're being paid for it. So it's not a bailout, Westwood Capital founder Dan Alpert said in an interview with The Hill. Borrowing deposits from other banks is hardly anything new. Broker deposits are something that's been going on forever. Clearly, there's a desire for liquidity in various institutions and for an increase in deposits, but the fact that there are excess deposits at many banks, he added. And smaller banks are fuming mad. Smaller and mid-sized banks are furious after Yellen told Congress this week that the big banks would be backstopped by the taxpayers, and not the $23 trillion banking industry as a whole. The nation's community banks denounced today's statements from the Treasury Secretary that uninsured deposits will be protected only at systemically risky banks, which is a bailout for big banks that rewards mismanagement and risky behavior. Rebecca Romero Rainey, the president of the Independent Community Bankers of America, said in a statement on Thursday. Ironically, investors are noting that the seemingly charitable move towards First Republic by JP Morgan and others can end up helping their businesses by making them appear as reliable as the federal government, which is completely unreliable, by the way. Let's face it, the large banks have enormous beneficiaries of the last week, Alpert said. I can't tell you how many businesses I know that have run from all these little small banks. Basically every bank that's below a top 5 and have pulled their money and moved it over to JP Morgan or any bank in the top 5. This has been ridiculous, he said. People have panicked. Unnecessarily, mind you, it's been crazy and it's been completely lunatic. And you know what the worst part is? There is so much government intervention in everything that realistically, this isn't even capitalism anymore. It is cronyism. It's corporatism. And furthermore, with regulation getting ready to be raised on banks, your JP Morgans, your Chases, your Wells Fargos, they can all go back up and afford to go on with the new regulations. Their competitors, the people who are fuming mad about this, they can't. So then they either get ready to go belly up and take people's deposits with them, or they get bought out by your JP Morgans and your Wells Fargos and your BMOs. Pretty sweet deal, huh? That's a lie, GOP Senator stops Treasury Secretary in her tracks when she defends Biden's narrative on Social Security. From Chris Enlow. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana called out Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Thursday for defending President Biden's narrative on Social Security. The president single-handedly has made Social Security funding a top issue in recent months because he has claimed repeatedly, without evidence, that Republicans want to slash Social Security safety net spending. Now Republicans are using Biden's $6.8 trillion budget proposal against him, highlighting the fact that Biden has not accounted for insolvency issues with Social Security. Not taking into consideration the funding problem is akin to a cut. Because if the programs are not funded, the money dries up and people lose benefits. During a Senate Finance Committee hearing, Cassidy asked Yellen about Social Security's insolvency issues and why Biden has not proposed a solution. And we have the video of it. So let's watch.
Madam Secretary, the President keeps saying he does not wish to have cuts in social. Is he aware that under current law, when the program goes broke in 9 years, that there will be a 24% benefit cut for those who are current recipients? Is he aware of that?
Well, it's clear that Social Security.
But is he, I apologize for interruption, but I have limited time. Is the President aware that when social goes broke in 9 years, under current law, there's a 24% cut in benefits for people who are currently receiving?
If we don't do anything about it, I think that's about right. But
Okay, let me
the
ask.
President wants to strengthen Social Security.
In
and
the
make sure that doesn't
$4.5
happen.
trillion of taxes the President has proposed, are any of those taxes going to shore up Social Security? I actually know that answer. The answer is of the $4.5 trillion in taxes he has proposed, not a dime is going to shore up Social Security. Does the President know personally anybody who is dependent upon Social Security, and if their benefits are cut by 24%, they will slide into poverty? It's hard for you to know, so I'll give you a pass on
The
that.
President knows many people on Social Security.
Then why doesn't the President care?
He cares very deeply.
Then where is his plan?
He stands ready to work with
That's
Congress
a
to
lie,
address.
because when a bipartisan group of senators has repeatedly requested to meet with him about social, so that somebody who is a current beneficiary will not see her benefits cut by 24%, we have not heard anything on our request. And we've made multiple requests to meet with the President. Now, you can't comment on that, I realize that, but that is a fact. And if you've been told to say he stands ready to meet, I will tell you there's absolutely no evidence, because we have not gotten our meeting.
Well, I believe the President does stand ready to work
Well,
with
again,
Congress
empirically, that is not
to address
true.
this issue.
Now, the President in the past has proposed increasing taxes on those making over $400,000 to pay for it. Although he's not made that formally, he has said that in the past. Now, he's also proposed to tax them more to pay for Medicare, and also to close the debt and deficit. So what would the rates have to be on that 2% of Americans who earn over $400K in order to do Medicare, the debt and deficit, and also to address our 75-year shortfall in Social Security? Do you have any sense of what the rates would have to be?
Well, he has proposed explicit increases in tax rates on very high income.
But do you think it's realistic that he can pay for Medicare, debt and deficit, and also address a 75% shortfall in social, a 75-year shortfall in social, by only taxing, the only thing he's going to do is to lay higher taxes on those who make more than 2%? I'm sure there's a projection of how much those rates would have to be. Can you tell us what those rates would have to be to do everything he is saying?
I can't tell you that, but I do know that he's put on the table many proposals that would raise very substantial revenues.
But of that
and-
$4.5 trillion, not a dime is going to social. And if you cannot tell me, I presume that they've not actually modeled what those rates would have to be, which tells me that he's actually not been developing his plan. Now, this is incredibly worrisome from a president.
And it's interesting to see the situation where this goes, because when we look at what Bill Cassidy is saying with this, a lot of what Biden says, and this is part of the reason for the success of people like Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant, and JoJo from Joyce, and people like that who do go out and they spend all their time touting the successes, if you can call them that, of the Biden admin, and what they're going to do and how much money they're going to raise from the rich, but never telling you how it's going to be allocated in the government. Because when you say, oh, well, if we go and tax the rich, we're going to raise all this money. That makes a good soundbite. It makes a good one-liner. It works very well for 280 characters. But with that being said, again, like Bill is pointing out, there's no allocation. There's nothing to back it up. It's just something to go back and get the... How do I want to put this? To get the outrage mob going. To go back and start talking about this more. So that is Bill Cassidy and Janet Yellen. All right, let's talk a little bit about Biden. Speaking of people's personal accounts. No surprise, Legacy Media AWOL on GOP Biden bank accounts findings from Tim Meads. Legacy Media's lack of interest in stories that damage the Democrat brand is never surprising, but it's always illuminating. Is this not bad? Yes, this is an op-ed. So the views expressed in this article are not necessarily the views of Turns of Pages Productions Contemporary or your host, J. Edgar, nor are they necessarily the opinions of the Daily Wire, but let's face it, they really are. The latest example can be found in the Lapdog Press's utter disinterest in a bombshell memo naming and shaming Biden family members who allegedly took huge chunks of cash from the Chinese Communist Party. Linked Energy Company isn't surprising. That report was released by Representative Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, earlier this week. Comer and others allege the energy company in question funneled more than $1 million in payments to Biden family members, including Hunter, Jim, and Haley Biden, daughter-in-law, and a fourth unknown Biden from 2015 to 2017, the Daily Wire reported. The alleged evidence was found thanks to a recent subpoena of John Robinson Walker, a Biden family associate, and his company Robinson Walker LLC. House Republicans allege that Walker used his business to transfer money from the Chinese State Energy HK Limited, a firm affiliated with CEFC China Energy, to Biden family members. For what purposes, that remains unclear, but as Comer has reminded us, this is the only one transaction pointing to possible corruption. A story like that, especially in the light of the laptop from hell, is explosive and has national consequences, and yet, Thursday evening, CBS, ABC, and NBC simply couldn't find time for it in their evening newscasts. And, by the way, that was on a very slow news day, because remember, we got done with everything with still having some stuff backed up from the day before. According to Newsbusters, NBC's news didn't even cover it online late Thursday, but the story hardly made front page news for the outlet. I'm sorry, they did cover it online late Thursday, but not on the front page. This bias by omission, as described by the media watchdog, is the norm for these sorts of outlets. It's part of a long-standing, unspoken agreement between legacy media and government, whether intentionally or as a byproduct of their own political inclinations. It has become the cornerstone of American politics that traditional media simply won't report or do the minimum coverage possible on that which harms the Democratic agenda. Most Americans seem to believe that, which is why trust in the press is at record lows. Perhaps it would be better if these outlets simply admitted their leftist biases. It certainly would become a lot more honest than claiming to be nonpartisan and objective. Well, and I mean, that's... So, there's a reason, by the way, that I pick the news stories that I pick. Because there's a lot more stuff that would probably draw a bigger audience and outrage. With the exception of the Daily Wire and the Blaze, I only use outlets that are used by the leftoids, essentially. What's NewsGuard certified? And NewsGuard is a government funded apparatus. I have crossed over and passed over some stories that didn't make it because they're only in a conservative blog, and a lot of times they later got corroborated when forced out into the public by the mainstream press, but realistically, it's like pulling teeth to come back out and try to get some of this back out there. So, and I know what it is that they omit and what they don't omit. And you can usually tell when you're watching contemporary because if you look across the top, what the mainstream media omitted has either the B with the flame on it or the DW on the tab. And that's legitimately. I do use the Daily Wire a little bit more because they put videos in that other mainstream outlets leave out. They'll cover the same story, but they'll put videos of the exchange in Twitter format, which doesn't get pinged for copyright as much on YouTube. It still does, but not as often. But there are so many things out there that just don't get covered by anybody else. And you've got to go to these platforms, even though, then you'll get the leftoid, which I'm thinking really hard about changing my tagline. When I'm doing, I've just lost my place completely off this. Like when I'm doing stuff over on the YouTube side, or when I'm setting this up, wow, I lost my train of thought entirely. Oh, when I'm setting up the topic on Twitch, setting it back to politics just to get some of the leftoids in here to get some view off of that, but that's what we have for that. What else do we have? This is a funny one. Harris details one of those moments where her life is like Veep. I don't actually want to read this. I did read a little bit of this off air. But I can say, my question here is, how is your life like Veep? Is it because it's fiction? You've made up almost every story about your life. Freedom! Yeah, that didn't happen. The buses thing didn't happen. You've made up every major aspect of your life to try to make yourself into some sort of black freedom fighter in the world, and none of it actually happened. In fact, you were a cop. Plain and simple, you are a cop. And how you got elected in the time of ACAB is beyond me, except for honk honk, of course. Hunter Biden news. Hunter Biden sues computer repair shop owner who worked on a laptop, accusing him of trying to invade his privacy. From Caitlin Palance. Hunter is accusing the Delaware computer repair shop owner who worked on a laptop of trying to invade his privacy and wrongfully sharing his personal data for political purposes, according to new court filings. Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. Whether or not the data on that laptop was shared for political purposes is irrelevant. Because the computer repair shop owner owned that data per the contract that you signed when you dropped off that laptop. And yes, it absolutely most likely was for political purposes. I'm going to walk what I just said back for a moment and say it may or may not have been for political purposes and may have been more about, when this guy has to go through the hard drive and see what's in there to see what's causing the computer to fail. And he sees a bunch of kiddie porn and then tries to turn it over to the FBI. He may be doing the right thing, trying to stop the exploitation of literal children. But you're going to come back out and say that it's out for political purposes. Again, none of that matters because we're now in a situation where he owns the data. Biden's lawyers also say that John Paul Isaac opposed the presidential candidacy of Hunter's father, Joe Biden, and that he gave Hunter's data to political enemies to help then President Trump in 2020. Mac Isaac intended and knew, or clearly should have known, that people to whom he provided the data that he believed to belong to Mr. Biden would use it against then candidate Joseph Biden and then assist then President Trump. Hunter's lawyer wrote in the court filing on Friday. Ronald Poliquin, a lawyer for Mac Isaac in the civil case, declined to comment to CNN on Friday, saying Mac Isaac's team was still reviewing Hunter Biden's claims and would respond in court. The filing from Hunter's lawyers outlines several ways Mac Isaac provided data to others, including when they say Mac Isaac sent a hard drive inside a stuffed animal to his father in New Mexico, and to a lawyer who worked with Trump's attorney, Rudolph Giuliani. Giuliani, Bannon, and Republican political aides ultimately got access to some of Biden's data, which contained sensitive, private material according to the lawsuit. The unauthorized accessing and dissemination of Mr. Biden's data is offensive and objectionable to Mr. Biden, and it would be highly offensive and objectionable to any reasonable person, as they would not expect a computer repairman to copy and disseminate the private and confidential contents of someone's data, the lawsuit from Hunter says. The case was filed as a countersuit to one filed by Mac Isaac against Hunter, CNN, and others. Which is, by the way, weird because, this is a person who's legitimately never going to be able to get his business back over this. He's going to have to move, change his name, and elsewhere. He is actually harmed by putting this information out there. He put a target on his own back to get the truth out there. And you know that he did. You know how rabid these leftoids are. You know that he did. I'm going to read a little bit from Fox, and then I'm going to put my 2 cents into this one. Hunter Biden countersuit against Wilmington computer repairman, one of the weirdest filings, according to Turley. Biden lawsuit is something out of Alice in Wonderland, Jonathan Turley argued on The Story. From Charles Creatz. Is there video? No, there's not. Oh, there is, but just not what we want to talk about. Hunter's countersuit against the computer shopkeeper who turned over a laptop belonging to the first son to authorities and members of the press is one of the weirdest filings I've read in some time, one legal scholar said. In his lawsuit, Biden claims John Paul Mac Isaac illegally distributed his personal data and alleges he invaded the privacy. Isaac has said the man he believed to be Hunter did not return after the 90-day policy window to retrieve his damaged laptop. Biden's suit reportedly claims Isaac violated a Delaware law prohibiting dissemination or exploitation of property within 1 year's time. That would be an interesting side of that. George Washington University law professor and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley said Friday the suit is like Alice in Wonderland. It gets curiouser and curiouser because this is one of the weirdest filings I have read in some time because Hunter is telling the court, this may or may not be my laptop and these files may or may not be my files, but I'm egregiously injured by the invasion of my privacy, Turley said on The Story with Martha McCallum. Hunter seemingly admitted that the laptop belongs to him in a February 2023 letter from his lawyers. Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, wrote letters to the Justice Department and Delaware Attorney General on February 1st calling for investigations into Steve Bannon, Giuliani, and Isaac. Biden's lawyers also sent cease and desist letters to others who obtained and disseminated the laptop's contents. Turley compared the situation to someone complaining that someone else may or may not have stolen their car, which would lead police to ask whether or not it's actually missing if it is their vehicle. One possible reason for the distinct language is in the countersuits is that Biden's team may not want to admit the potentially damaging files in the laptop are his own, Turley argued. Which again makes this a really weird situation. So, Hunter Biden needs a new lawyer. Because if you're coming out here to try to say that this is not yours, which he is trying to say this, he's trying to be ambiguous about this. The fact that you are trying to claim damages from the fact that this is being disseminated requires you to admit that this is yours. And discovery, by the way, is going to tank and absolutely destroy this case. I hate to tell you. In order for you to have standing, and this, by the way, is something that we learned from the Trump, from the suits for the election integrity and honk, whether or not honk the election in 2020. Honk. Is that in order to file a challenge, and this is why a lot of the stuff got thrown out. Whether or not it was right to get thrown out still remains in question at this point. But the reasoning behind throwing the cases out in the Trump election honk honkity honk 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 is because we had to figure out whether or not the person who was bringing the case forward had standing, was directly damaged by the case. In order for you to be directly damaged by the contents of this laptop, Hunter Biden, you first have to acknowledge the fact that this is your laptop. This is your information, and the information in this laptop is accurate. Otherwise, it's a defamation suit. You're not bringing a defamation suit. You're bringing a dissemination of personal materials. There's a difference, and discovery is going to destroy your case if this is not yours. And I hate to say it, but it's going to tank your old man's political career if it is yours. This may be one of the stupidest legal moves I have seen in a very long time. Because in order for you to be damaged by this, it all has to be true. In the way you're filing it, anyway. So, good luck. I think this is very stupid of you. We've got a large amount of foreign news here. From CBS News, International Criminal Courts issues arrest warrant for Putin over Russia's alleged war crimes in the Ukraine, with no author given. The International Criminal Court said Friday it has issued arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes against because of his alleged involvement in abductions of children from Ukraine. The court said in a statement that Putin is allegedly responsible for the war crime of unlawful deportation or population of children, and that of unlawful transfer of population, children, from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. It also issued a warrant on Friday for the arrest of Maria Alexeyevna Belova, the Commissioner for Children's Rights in the Office of the President of the Russian Federation, on similar allegations. The ICC said that its pretrial chamber found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that each suspect bears responsibility for the war crime of unlawful deportation of population and that of unlawful transfer of population from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation in prejudice of Ukrainian children. Holy crap, this is even dumber than I realized. I didn't look into any of the charges before I read this. This is me first finding the charges right now. This is even stupider than I thought this was going to be. I thought this was going to be The Hague just coming out and saying, hey, war crimes. Look over here, war crimes. Putin man bad. This is even dumber. We're in a situation right now. Again, if my theory is true, this makes this even worse than anything else you could possibly imagine. But this is a point where now Russia's occupying an area, essentially turning it into Russia because it's occupying. Under war occupation standards, this is Russia, Russian territory at this point. But because the families that were on Russian occupied territory in Ukraine are staying there, whether or not willingly or by force, this constitutes a deportation of children. Are you out of your mind? Are you dumb? Holy crap. Wow. Over the course of the last year, the prosecution, as well as Ukrainian prosecutor's office, has been gathering evidence from a multitude of country and individual sources. CBS News' Pamela Falk reported earlier this week that ICC prosecutor Karim Khan was preparing to seek arrest warrants for individuals involved in the alleged abduction of Ukrainian children and targeting of civilian infrastructure. Okay, who's going to enforce this? Earlier this month, Khan visited Ukraine for the 4th time. I leave Ukraine with a sense of momentum towards justice is accelerating. Russia's foreign ministry responded to the arrest warrants with a statement saying, "The decisions of the International Criminal Court have no meaning for our country, including from a legal standpoint of view. Russia is not a party to the Rome Statute of the ICC and bears no obligations under it." Lvova Belova, accused of spearheading the program of transferring children, defended her conduct. "What I want to say firstly is great that the international community has appreciated the work to help children of our country. That we don't leave them in war zone, that we take them out, that we create good conditions for them, surrounding them with loving, caring people." An indictment of Putin would make the president of Russia an international fugitive, CBS News' David Martin reported. I can't believe I just read that. I can't believe I just read those words. You can't be serious right now. Who's going to enforce it? What are you going to do? Go into Moscow with guns blazing? Actually, you know what? Let me get some popcorn. Let me see the International Community Court go and invade a sovereign country to take out its leader. Let me see how that works out for you. Are you out of your mind? We're gonna go to war, folks, at some point or another. More foreign news for this. Archived from Defense News, Slovakia to transfer 13 MiG-29s to Ukraine after Poland gives 4. Slovak Prime Minister Eduard Heger has announced his country will deliver 13 out-of-commission Mikoyan MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine as part of Bratislava's support to the nation's struggle against the Russian invasion. God, I can't believe this. Promises must be kept, Heger said in a tweet on Friday, adding that Slovakia's military aid was designed to help Ukraine defend itself and the entire Europe against Russia. The latest move comes one day after Polish President Andrzej Duda declared his country will supply the first 4 MiG-29 jets to Ukraine in the coming days, with more aircraft to be delivered in the future. Slovakia secured 24 single-seater and twin-seater Soviet-made fighters, allowing Czechoslovakia's dissolution. According to data from Slovak Ministry of Defense, of these, the 11 remaining operational aircraft were withdrawn from service last August. Commenting on the Slovak Prime Minister's announcement, the country defense minister Jaroslav Nad said in a Facebook post on Friday Slovakia is donating retired, unused, and unusable MiG-29s. He added that Ukraine has a plant where they can service them. It has trained pilots who know how to fly such jets. In addition to the fighters, Slovakia will also supply elements of its Soviet-built 2K-12 KUB air defense systems to Ukraine, local news agency TSAR reported. In return for the donated gear, Nad said earlier this week the country hopes to receive about 200 million euros, or about $213 million from the European Union's European Peace Facility, and some $700 million worth of weapons and military equipment from the US. Meanwhile, of course, having the defense contractors go back and resupply, putting money back into the pockets of various congresspeople, and most likely the president. You starting to see how this goes when we do a proxy war? From the BBC, Russia threatens to destroy Ukrainian jets after Poland and Slovakia pledges. From Jonathan Beale and Robert Grinnell. Russia has threatened to destroy any fighter jets given to the Ukraine by its allies after 2 countries promised planes. Slovakia became the second NATO country to pledge Kiev some MiG-29 aircraft on Friday, a day after Poland. Slovakia's fleet was grounded last year and no longer uses the jets. Ukraine has asked Western countries for modern jets, but because of long training times, these are seen as only long-term options. It sees extra aircraft as important for defenses and possible counterattacks a year into the Russian invasion. Other NATO countries are considering sending planes such as MiG-29s, a model which dates from the time of the Soviet Union, which Ukrainian pilots are trained to fly. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov condemned the plan, saying that the aircraft would not affect the outcome of Moscow's special military operation, as it calls the war. He said they would only bring additional woes for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Of course, during special military operation, all equipment will be subject to destruction, the spokesman said. The Polish and Slovak pledges are a positive move for Ukraine, which has more pilots than planes, but will not make a decisive difference. The Ukrainians say what they really need is US-made F-16 fighters. Yuri Saka, senior Ukrainian defense advisor, says fourth-generation fighters have better capabilities. It still seems unlikely Ukraine would get them, at least for now, as it would take time to train Ukrainian pilots to fly on Western jets. Well, and I mean, of course, Russia's going to come back out and say they're going to destroy them. You, Western countries, would do the same thing. If you were in an active combat situation, such as Afghanistan, or Iran, or Iraq, and one of the neighboring countries decided to supply them with planes, you would say the same thing. Oh yes, no, I'm going to go back out and destroy them. Some propaganda for the end of the day. Russia losing troops so fast they may collapse by year's end, says ex-general. From Fatma Khalid. Ben Hodges, retired U.S. Army officer who served as commanding general in the U.S. Army Europe, predicted Russian forces might collapse before the end of the year, succumbing to the battle of attrition on Ukraine. Russia is being attrited at such a rate that they may collapse before the end of this year, assuming the West delivers in time what we've promised. War is a test of will and a test of logistics, Hodges tweeted in reference to the assessment by military expert Marcus M. Keup, who leads the Department of Defense I keep wanting to say it like economy. Defense economics at the Military Academy of the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Keup said in a recent interview with German news outlet T-Online that Ukrainian forces would soon have leverage in the war as the West continues to supply them with military aid and Russia loses more of its troops. Russian forces have been experiencing a number of setbacks in Ukraine, including shortages of fighters and equipment, despite some recent advancements. Meanwhile, Western nations, including the US, have continued to provide Ukraine with military and humanitarian aid. The fight between Ukrainian and Russian forces has extended through major Ukrainian cities since the beginning of the war, including Kiev, Odessa, Kherson, with no end to the war in sight. Most recently in Bakhmut, in Ukraine's Donetsk region, it's been the long site of a months-long intense battle between Russian and paramilitary forces against Ukrainian troops. See, and this is, by the way, the part of the problem that we see with this when it goes anywhere else in here. Now, Russia has a lot of people and a lot of land. To say that they are losing troops in such a fast fashion that they may collapse in on themselves, I mean, you've got to be taking a lot of troops, and we've got to be able to see a lot of bodies to go with that. I've yet to see any bodies, any evidence that they're taking this kind of casualty. Meanwhile, still hearing that, the taking of Bakhmut, or the attempt to defend Bakhmut, was costly to the Ukrainians. I don't know. I've got a lot of questions about this. I always have. In one of the more interesting articles that I've seen in a long time, ahead of Xi-Putin meeting in Moscow, White House rejects ceasefire in Ukraine. Why is it the White House's decision? I mean, we all know why. Of course we all know why, but if we're on paper, why is it the White House's decision whether to have a ceasefire in Ukraine? This is not our territory or our country. From Laura Kelly. The Biden admin is raising the alarm that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, is likely to call for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, warning that support for such a move would play into the favor of Russian President Vladimir Putin. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said Friday that an unconditional ceasefire halting Russia's offensive in Ukraine will legitimize Moscow's hold on an estimated 17% of Ukrainian territory that was taken by force. A ceasefire now is effectively the ratification of Russian conquest, Kirby said. And of course, it would be another continued violation of the UN Charter. The remarks from the White House come ahead of an expected summit early next week between Xi and Putin in Moscow. Xi's visit to Russia also comes alongside following Beijing's publication of a 12-point peace plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine, but criticized by the US and its allies as an empty position paper that fails to hold Moscow accountable for its aggression. Boy, pot, meat, kettle, holy crap. Kirby called for Xi to reach out to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Chinese are serious about being a neutral arbiter. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba on Thursday said he spoke with China's state counselor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang, where the two discussed the significance of the principle territorial integrity and underscored the importance of Zelensky's peace formula to end Russia's war, which in part calls for Russia to withdraw its troops from all its territory it occupies in Ukraine. Chinese officials have sought to portray their stance on Russia's war in Ukraine as neutral, but Washington, Kiev, and its supporters have criticized Beijing for failing to condemn Moscow's invasion and violation of Ukraine's territorial sovereignty, a principle that China holds up when warding off outside criticisms against its designs on subsuming the democratic island of Taiwan. And China has further offered diplomatic and economic cover for Russia's war through ongoing engagement with Putin and robust commercial ties. China is a key importer of Russian oil, and Chinese companies are implicated in supplying Russia's military sector. Okay, again. Now, I understand why the US, and this of course is not on paper, because on paper there is no say whatsoever. But I understand why the US is coming out and calling for not having a ceasefire. They are too invested in the narrative that Putin wants to come back out and steamroll Kiev, something again that I have not seen any evidence to. And that if we just pull back, then they're just going to steamroll and take over all of Europe. That's the narrative that they're pushing down. And anything short of driving Russia out of everything that once was Ukraine, including Crimea, is capitulating to Putin. And they can't do it. Like, even if they came out and said, okay, let's see if we can have a peace plan at this point, that would leave their followers coming out here who used to be anti-war screaming up about the idea of, oh, you're just, all you're going to do is you're going to play into Putin's hands and anything other than going and killing Putin, which, I mean, it's coming, especially with a Hague coming down like this. It's just being a Putin puppet. They will hold this war out for 20 years if need be to make sure they can save face about Putin. Alright, last kind of stuff that we have here. From Axios, YouTube restores Trump's channel. From Sarah Fisher, YouTube will lift its restrictions on former President Trump's channel Friday, a spokesperson confirmed to Axios. The restrictions have prevented Trump from posting any new YouTube videos to his account, which has more than 2.6 million followers, for over 2 years. YouTube initially suspended Trump's account in January 2021, several days following the Selfie Fest, after his account violated its policies for posting content that incited calls to violence. Not proven, by the way. A month later, the company said that it would lift the restrictions which prohibited Trump from posting any new videos when it determined that the risk of violence has decreased. YouTube also took additional restrictive measures, such as disabling comments on videos on Trump's channel. Those restrictions will also be lifted. On Friday, YouTube's Vice President of Public Policy, Leslie Miller, told Axios that beginning March 17th, the Donald J. Trump channel is no longer restricted and the ability to upload new content is restored. We carefully evaluated the continued risk of real-world violence, balancing that with the importance of preserving the opportunity for voters to hear equally from major national candidates in the run-up to the election, Miller said. This channel will continue to be subject to our policies just like any other channel on YouTube. Not quite. And see, Google is being partially smart with this and realizing the fact that if they do continue to keep him off, now whether or not he uploads, that's on him, but if they continue to keep him off on their standards, which I don't know if he would come back. I mean, he's got an incredibly powerful Rumble channel right now, which is a platform I do feel like I need to get onto at some point here. But the Donald has an incredibly powerful Rumble channel. He doesn't need YouTube at this point. But part of the question is, I mean, anytime that he would go up and get up and go live, in spite of what it says and whether or not it might be against YouTube's terms of service, you're going to get 1 million hits instantly and probably 10 billion hits after the fact. And I would say at least 90% of those people don't have an ad blocker. You would instantly get that kind of pull from the Donald. Immediately. And all that revenue right now is going to Rumble, their competitor. But also, this does constitute an in-kind. If they were to keep him blocked off, this would be an in-kind contribution to the Democrats. Which would not, I mean, they've already been implicated in doing plenty of that, but realistically, this would be something that would have to be explained, and I'm sure the new CEO of YouTube, and I don't know who that is at this point, would have to get called in front of Congress to attest for that. From Reuters, I'm back. Trump returns to YouTube and Facebook after 2-year ban. From March 17th, former U.S. President Donald Trump posted to YouTube and Facebook on Friday in a return to the tech platforms he used to power his political rise until he was cut off following the selfie fest on Congress by his followers. The posts on his Facebook page and YouTube channel, which were titled, I'm back, show a CNN video announcing Trump's election as president in 2016 race against Hillary. Then it fades to a Trump 2024 screen. So a nice little short. Sorry to keep you waiting, Trump says in the video. So, and I think he's going to start to get smart about it too. And really, honestly, he's got Truth Social, but nobody goes there. And being on Truth Social, by the way, does allow the mainstream people to go back and filter his message. They go to Truth Social, they find the damning part, and then they go back and post on it breathlessly on their platforms. One of the big strengths of the Trump campaign was his ability to go and talk directly to the voters and bypass the mainstream media. I think a lot of the blackpilling on Trump right now, too, by the way, comes from the fact that the people who are now going Team DeSantis, Team Cruz, God forbid, Team Haley, or whatever the hell else it is, are looking at this and saying, oh, well, they told me that he said this wild, outrage thing on Truth Social. I don't go there because I'm on the waiting list to get there, but they told me that he said this on Truth Social. I can't have this man be president. I don't know that I would vote for him personally, but a lot of that comes from my dislike of the financial crimes that he did for as long as he did. All right, from Local 12. This will be the last thing we have here. We'll touch on this one. Local district approves 4-day school week to fight against teacher burnout. From Courtney Wheaton. A 4-day school week may sound like a dream for students, but leaders in a local school district that has approved the new schedule say it isn't a free day. The move comes as North College Hill is working to fix a problem school districts are seeing across the nation: teacher burnout. Under a new policy, students will go to school Tuesday through Friday. I don't know what is going on with this article. Let me refresh this. Alright, let's see if this works better. Students will go to school Tuesday through Friday. Monday will be used as a review day for students and a day for teachers to prepare. North College City School Superintendent Eugene Blaylock Jr. says the idea was born out of a concern for teachers in his district. This new approach will allow employees, like intervention specialist Elizabeth Daly, to come into school without students on Mondays and focus on planning and collaborating with fellow educators. So they're still going to have a 5-day work week. There's a lot of paperwork behind my job, so I'll be able to hold these meetings, not during the days I have students, so it doesn't take away from their education. Because I have to leave to go to a meeting, I'll be able to focus more of my attention on my students when they're here because I'll have an entire day to get rid of all the other stuff, Daly said. Local 12 asked how the district will provide support to parents who work and aren't able to stay home an extra day. We'll have limited support for K through 8. This is a work day. For everyone, our paraprofessionals who work closely with the teachers will be able to help supervise the students who come into the building, said Blaylock Jr. Further, pointing out that the current educational system is a babysitting service, essentially. The superintendent hopes that local businesses like All Star Sports and Italianette will provide internship opportunities for the older kids to work on the days they aren't in school so they can gain hands-on training. Blaylock Jr. has high hopes for his new approach. He says it's been approved by the Ohio Department of Education and will be monitored for the next 3 years. North College Hill will be the first district in Ohio and possibly in the Midwest to use this approach. So, I have got mixed opinions about this. Very mixed opinions about this. When I look at something like this, when I see the idea of schools changing their schedule around to do things for administrative purposes, my first thought is the fact that, honestly, the training camp for 9-to-5 factory workers just isn't a feasible model anymore. It'll work for a lot of students who are probably going to go into that dedicated, scheduled lifestyle. I hate to admit it, but I am in that dedicated, scheduled lifestyle. While for a long time I wasn't early in the morning until mid-afternoon, I was for a long time a person who was into that. You know, working for almost the entire time we did contemporary from 10 a.m. till 7 p.m. Tuesday through Thursday, or Tuesday through Friday rather, and then the early morning on Saturday. But there are people who are going to be, and this is one of the things that when they started doing school from home, I started to say, okay, well, this is going to change the opportunity for kids to grow up in a different situation than what their parents had to grow up into and go in and attempt for the 9-to-5. A lot of these students are probably not going to work the 9-to-5. Hell, a lot of these students are probably not going to have a schedule as long as they get all their work done throughout the week. Their supervisors aren't going to care when they work. The factory setting, work your shift and then go home, doesn't work for everybody anymore. Now, as far as this goes, this is still going to be, your school is going to be on hours on factory times, your 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or whatever it's going to be. And a part of that is going to be to keep the kids out of the house when the regular shift work parents are doing their regular shift work. But I've also got to say that especially for the teacher burnout thing, like, seriously, give me a break. The union has mandated breaks in periods, especially for the older, like for the younger kids, not so much, but for the older kids in high school and whatnot, you have to have one period off or break. And for the elementary, they've got the recesses where one of them has to work. A few of them have to work at a time, but not all of them. And the rest of them go and sit in the lounge and discuss how much they hate their students. I don't know how you're getting burnt out off of this on a model that worked for 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years we've been doing this model. And none of your predecessors got burnt out from it. So a lot of this sounds like a lot of whining from the teachers union to try to give benefits to teachers who are failing their students already in the first place. In an educational system where a lot of these students cannot afford to miss a single day of school. Because our test scores are dismal. They're terrible. And we are not competing on the rest of the world. So hopefully this is going to be a chance for everybody to go back and reassess. And coming off of this from KAIT 8, more schools considering a 4-day school week. From Griffin Demaris. The traditional school week has looked a little different for the past couple years. Many schools around the area have moved to 4-day weeks. One that has seen great success from this change is Southland School District in Cardwell, Missouri, which began the schedule change in the 2020 to 2021 school year. Superintendent Dr. Misty Galloway said the extra day off makes children more interested in coming to school and keeps them out of trouble in the classrooms. Our teachers and our students typically take care of all those doctor's appointments, dental appointments on Monday, so I have seen an increase in our attendance, she said. Some other benefits we have seen our discipline issues go down in our buildings. The Pickett School District is asking parents what their thoughts are on the idea. While the reaction on social media seems mixed, students like Brandon Potts are in favor of the change. So 1 day is knocked off the school week would be better for students. It would be less stress on them and would be more productive at school, he said. One of the main criticisms is some parents think kids are in school for too long each day, but Potts says the 2-hour difference is not that bad. So it looks like, on top of everything else, they're staying for longer. So they're maybe not missing every day of school. So this might work out and actually might actually take up some childcare costs too. But realistically, again, the other end of that is you're still putting people in the situation where they can't make their own schedules, and some schedules work out better for others. But we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what the community decides to do. And the last thing that I have before we do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day comes from The Blaze. A letter from a gay man issuing ultimatum to his father goes viral. You're not allowed to vote for parties that seek to murder me. I commented on this. From Carlos Garcia. A letter from a gay man issuing an emotional ultimatum to his Republican father went viral after he posted it on Twitter. So I'm having to send that email that so many of us in the LGBTQI, sometimes Y+, are sending. Parents vote GOP or keep your son. They're in denial about anti-queer, anti-trans legislation in the US, read the tweet from Ryan Short, a gay man from Seattle. He posted a screenshot of his message to his father and the response back. It's simple, he can do the right thing or not. There's no compromise on this very specific requirement I make, which is this: you are not allowed to vote for government parties that seek to murder me. Read the text. I shouldn't have to type those words out loud, but here we are. This is your dad, stop your vicious words. This is not about homosexuality. I have friends who are gay and a brother who I supported, loved, and... The response read, but was cut off in the screenshot. He posted the entire letter to his family members, issuing the same ultimatum. Hear me clearly. You cannot vote for the GOP and continue to have a relationship with me. No exceptions. I'm inviting no dialogue, and I have no interest in nuance, he wrote in part. This tweet went viral with more than 4.1 million views and more than 2.3 thousand retweets. Not all responses were supportive, however. Wow, this is pitiful, manipulative, narcissistic, and borderline abusive to your parents. You should be embarrassed of yourself. Do you know how many gay men are disowned by their parents just for being gay? And you're giving an ultimatum to your parents who evidently love and accept you because of how they vote? Read one popular response. The Business Insider reported that Short's father decided to leave his local Republican club on Thursday. The letter did not specify why the man believed the Republican Party was seeking to murder him or anyone else. Short's pinned tweet on his account read, "My goal this year is to be a hot, dumb slut." Look. If you are going to issue ultimatums to me, and this, by the way, goes right along with what I had said earlier on in the week on the main channel, which, by the way, we can't see right now because I'm suspended on there. But this goes right in line with what we saw on the main channel, and that is the fact that I'm not going to be, you're not going to hold me to an ultimatum. I said that with the people who are being anti-Semitic. You are not going to make me one of you, no matter how many times you tell me to go watch your anti-Semitic DLive follower, no matter how many times you go off and tell me the 1355 race statistic, no matter how many times you come running out and tell me that I have to be, you love me, but you don't support the fact that I'm individualist, that I don't see the big picture. You are not going to change my beliefs, and if you give me an ultimatum, I will walk you out the door. I hate the fact that it's come down to this in this country. But I'm going to say right off the bat, 5 or 10 years down the road, this kid is going to come running back to his parents, or he would have. It sounds like his parents might have cucked at this point. And they're going to go do whatever the kid says, which is a part of the problem. Parents are so afraid of losing their kids and losing out on their progeny that they will stop and do whatever they said. My parents won't do that. They told me so. They're slowly being a little bit influenced by me, I think, from, you know, my stance and my outlook on the way politics works in the world versus what they've been told for their entire lives. But I've never told them that you need to change the way you vote or stop talking to me, because it's not going to be like that. And they've never said the same thing to me. There is a mutual respect, and this child has absolutely no respect for his parents. You can influence, you can present information, whether it be propagandistic or not, to try to show them the way that you see the world. But to say, do this or else, you do not deserve to have parents who care about you. And that is the bottom line. These are people who, in spite of the abuse that you're giving them, still support and honor you as their progeny. And you're going to do this to them publicly, no less. You can go straight to hell. That is below low. Alright, let's do Twitter trending and head out of here. Get the Explore page over here. Look at the trending tab and let's see what we've got. Probably going to be a lot of March Madness right now. Purdue is trending right now. Purdue is ranked number 1 in effective height in Ken Palm. Farley Dickinson is ranked 363 out of 363. Literally David versus Goliath. A shot, Purdue from 3. Purdue when they take the lead versus FDU. So now I don't know, is Purdue playing tonight? Is that what's going on? I don't keep up on the March Madness tournament. I don't know enough about it to make a bracket. I'm typically working all the time, so I don't see a lot of stuff with this. I know it's exciting for people. I know we talked about the vasectomy madness, which I think is incredibly stupid. Looks like it might be close to all tied up right now. So I hope that not all of your brackets are busted. SmackDown. We're not just friends, we're brothers. Fight Owens Fight, Sam Zayn over at hashtag SmackDown. Zillion and Santos eating down. Sami Zayn, if you have to scream at me, do it. If you need to punch me in the face, do it. Whatever you have to do so we can get back to working together. There's drama in the completely faked drama situation. Let's listen.
Do it. Do whatever you have to do so we can get back to working together. Do it. Do whatever you have to do so we can get back to working together.
So, a few things that are running over on SmackDown. Definitely makes me interested in going in and following once again. Alright. Number 3, CAI GPT. And this mostly seems to be posts about Bitcoin. Diving into today's trends, Lance Reddick captivates the masses while CAI GPT sparks curiosity. St. Patrick brings luck and The Wire stirs nostalgia. What is the CAI GPT? This just seems to be a trend that people are marking to talk about Bitcoin. I have no idea what the hell this is otherwise. Alright, Lance Reddick, which I didn't put on the top of the show because I didn't know anything about who this is. But Lance Reddick passed away. R.I.P. Lance Reddick, one of the only people to genuinely rattle Eric Andre. I often think about the story Lance Reddick told about working with Keanu Reeves in the newest Wick movie. We've gotten to know each other a little better. I hope I didn't get in trouble for telling the story during John Wick Chapter 4. My first day of filming happened to be Keanu's birthday, but he wasn't in the scene. He came to the set anyway at 9 o'clock at night with his girlfriend who I had never met, and she is, can I say a bad word? His girlfriend is cool as fuck. She told me that she asked Keanu for what he wanted to do for his birthday, and he said, I want to go see Lance. He'd never done this before, but he wrote me a note thanking me for what I brought to the character in these movies. I wanted to give the note. He wanted to give the note to me. I'll never forget it. I'm going to cry now. So this is a person who looks like he was in he played a lot of supporting roles in a lot of drama movies. Oz, American Horror Story, Faults, The Domestics, The Wire. Doesn't look like he ever got a starring role, but this is somebody that a lot of people knew. Passing away at the age of 60. Ask in the chat if this was somebody who affected your life. And the last one, Drag Race. RuPaul's Drag Race. The holy trinity of lip sync for your life. Not Sasha made me realize it's their technique. Hashtag Drag Race. Yeah, RuPaul's been a thing since I was a kid. I don't understand the drag thing. I never will. It is, it's woman face is what it is. And you can't look at some of the stuff that we see coming up here and not say that this is highly sexualized. And men pretending to be highly sexualized as well. I don't know. But we'll get this the rest of the way off of here. Alright, so the end of a tumultuous week. We had a little bit of a viewership drop in the beginning after I said my piece. And then we gained it back in spades the very next day before having some drop-off go off at the same time. But we'll be back here as long as one person continues to watch. We will be back here every day, every weekday, for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Join me here tomorrow late in the day for a video game stream. We'll go do some more Legend of Zelda, looks like. So I'll be back here. Watch the Twitter and the Discord for times on that, and that will be on the backup channel here as well as Twitch and DLive. So come back and join me for that. Otherwise, we'll be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary on the backup channel because, for whatever reason, a 2-year-old video decided to get me a strike. So come back and join me for that. It'll be a great time, and we will see you then. And until Monday, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.